That that word. Hello, 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 hello. I'm gonna go tweet it. Let everyone know. We're gonna watch a couple of YouTube videos by E. Wait, hold on. Let's go ahead and like our stream. 60 FPS. I forgot what I put my. Ooh, the quality. Look at that. Yeah, I love that. That's so funny, bro. That's working. Probably take it. Sometime. Eating, bro. Eating Nightbot. Nightbot on YouTube.
This episode is supported by Tab for a Cause,
Hold on.
a free browser extension that donates to charity with each tab you open while browsing. Click the link below to get started.
There it goes.
Ladrones, the island of thieves. This was the name given by the Spanish and the Portuguese to the area around Hong Kong, which was filled with pirates, crawling with miscreants and smugglers and all manner of barbary. The traders made deals with the imperial government in exchange for rooting out these pirates, and in doing so established favourable trade conditions with the Chinese, and a permanent settlement in Macau. The names of these pirates are still famous in the Pearl River Delta. Zhang Yi and his wife Madame Zhang, who ruled the pirate confederations and the enormous Red Flag fleet.
Why not?
Before the British arrived, Hong Kong was mostly a small fishing community and occasional haven for pirates. They had come to buy Chinese goods such as tea and porcelain, which was highly prized back in England. The conservative Chinese government, however, restricted trade with foreigners to the port of Canton, or Guangzhou, and local officials taxed imports at very high rates. The bankrupt East India Trading Company soon found itself at a huge trade imbalance, buying highly prized Chinese goods with the only payment the Chinese would accept: silver. In an effort to correct this imbalance, the British began smuggling opium into Canton, which is the only thing the Chinese were interested in buying. This effectively reversed the trade imbalance and created an epidemic of opium addicts. Things soon spiraled wildly out of control when the Chinese clamped down and destroyed British opium without compensation and cut off food supply to the traders in an effort to drive them away. So the British decided to leave. Just kidding, they stayed and were eventually attacked by Chinese ships on the island of Hong Kong. Now, I don't think the Chinese are aware that you just don't mess with the British Navy in the 19th century. The British sent in ships and soon won the so-called Opium War, and China was forced to hand over Hong Kong Island to the British, as well as abolish the Canton-style import taxes and open more trading ports. The first British institutions began showing up, mostly churches and missions to spread Christianity. When mainland China became embroiled in conflict, the British invaded Beijing in an attempt to force a handover of the Kowloon Peninsula to give Hong Kong Island a buffer zone. And then, in 1989, they leased the new territories surrounding the area for a period of 99 years, or as good as forever. As Hong Kong grew, it began heavily westernizing in education, government, and even culture. The differences between Hong Kong and China began growing as the mainland became more and more unstable. Hong Kong's defining moment came during the Second World War, in which it was invaded and occupied for 3 years by the Japanese. More than 1 million people fled or were deported by the Japanese, who ruled Hong Kong directly by the military. British rule was then re-established after the Japanese Empire was defeated, although it was now a shadow of its former glory. However, its saving grace came with the Chinese Civil War, after which many of the wealthy business owners fled the communists and took refuge in nearby Hong Kong. As the prosperity of a nearly unregulated capitalist society took hold, so too did inequality skyrocket, and hundreds of thousands flocked to the prosperous island, living in poverty and extremely dense living quarters. Fires and diseases were rampant. When the West blockaded trade with China for its support of North Korea in the Korean War, Hong Kong had to do a complete 180 on its economy. Hong Kong's wealthy white-collar elite turned to finance, consultancy, electronics, and manufacturing, which caused a huge boom in prosperity. Hong Kong became ridiculously wealthy in the next few decades and earned its nickname the Pearl of the Orient. In the 70s, it became much more progressive, with landmarks such as equal pay for men and women, and social programs to subsidize education. Life expectancy rose and corruption fell. Uncertainty over Hong Kong's future began with the lead up to the lease expiry in 1997, in which China demanded not only the new territories, but Hong Kong Island as well. At the negotiation table, Margaret Thatcher secured a deal on the One China, Two Systems policy, by which Hong Kong would remain largely self-governing for a 50-year handover period. So, as it remains today, Hong Kong is still largely independent, with its own economy, currency, passport, and is functionally a country for all intents and purposes. However, nobody really knows what will happen after the handover is completed in 2047. It didn't take much for you to open this video. It was as simple as opening up a tab. What if I told you that just by opening that tab you could have raised money for charity? Tab for a Cause lets you do just that. At absolutely no cost to you, you can download the browser extension and donate every time you open a new browser tab, which supports global relief work, education, and water supply, among others. By clicking the link below, you'll not only be supporting my channel, but also the charity of your choice for free just by using the internet. One of my favorites is the Vlog Brothers Foundation to Decrease World Suck by fellow YouTubers John and Hank Green. If you, like me, would like to help support them, click the link below to get started. It only takes 5 seconds. Thank you everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so on Patreon, and you can follow me on Twitter. Until next time. This episode is supported by CuriosityStream. Start watching documentaries and other non-fiction titles at curiositystream.com/SUIBHNE and use the code Sweeney for 1 month free. And by the patrons who chose today's topic. Sign up at Patreon to vote for the next country. In the city of Brussels, German philosopher Karl Marx and his collaborator Friedrich Engels penned the Communist Manifesto, a book espousing a radical form of socialism which spoke of utopia and a revolutionary overthrow of the capitalist bourgeoisie. The same year, the revolutions of 1848 erupted in France, the German Confederation, Poland, and the Italian peninsula. Although these revolutions would be quelled, change was in the air. It had been more than a century since Russia had been invaded by Napoleon, and now in 1917 the powerful German Empire had captured Poland, Belarus, and Lithuania. The Russian people were starving in the streets, and soon the capital was in revolution. First in the February overthrow of the monarchy, but later in October, the more infamous takeover by Vladimir Lenin's Bolsheviks, sparking the Russian Civil War. One of the deadliest civil wars in human history, its casualties outnumbered even those of the First World War. The war was broadly divided into the Reds, the Bolsheviks, and the White Movement, a loosely organized alliance of anti-Bolsheviks, anarchists, foreign powers, and civilian militias. The war was devastating. The biggest killer was starvation. The Soviets, a Russian word for workers' union, surrendered to Germany in 1918, and the Reds and the Whites committed numerous mass killings of one another in the Red and White Terror respectively, including the Bolsheviks' brutal murder of the Russian royal family in their Yekaterinburg homestead. The Reds soundly defeated the Whites after Leon Trotsky forced conscription, and the Western Allies began withdrawing troops at the conclusion of the Great War. Lenin planned on expanding the revolution to Europe, but was handed a crushing defeat by the Poles at the Battle of Warsaw, which saw that Bolshevism would be contained to the former Russian Empire. Separate Soviet republics were formed in their territory and united to form the USSR. When Lenin died, a young radical criminal with the Communist Party took power: Joseph Stalin. Civil wars rarely breed a stable and united society, and the USSR was no different. To secure their grip on power, the NKVD, or Soviet Secret Police, was formed, rounding up and executing thousands of anti-revolutionaries. The Gulag was established, the infamous Siberian concentration camps, where millions would eventually be worked to death. The USSR was now a totalitarian one-party state. Stalin is considered by many to be the most evil man in history, a paranoid and cruel tyrannical narcissist who surrounded himself with those loyal to him. He instituted radical reforms to transform Russia into an industrial power, causing a man-made famine in Ukraine, southern Russia, and Kazakhstan, which killed millions. He rounded up and executed members of the Communist Party, wealthy oligarchs, and the Red Army, and executed them in the Great Purge. Millions of political prisoners were executed or sent to the Gulag. He made an alliance with Adolf Hitler, dividing Europe between their spheres of influence, and together the two tyrannical warmongers invaded Poland in 1939. Beginning the Second World War. The Soviets narrowly escaped war with Britain and France, who condemned the invasion because their treaty with Poland only required action in the case of German aggression, not Soviet. Free from their interference, the Soviets invaded Finland, but due to Stalin's purges, the invasion was a stunning failure. So they settled instead to annex the Baltic states and Moldova, while committing atrocities in Poland, such as the Katyn massacre, which they later blamed on the Nazis. Events took a sharp turn when Hitler betrayed his Russian ally and invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, and so began the 4-year-long conflict that would see the capture of millions of POWs, the starvation of millions of Soviet citizens, and the deportation of millions more communist officials and Jews to concentration camps. By some estimates, nearly half of the USSR's 4.8 million Jewish people lost their lives, most of them living in the Russian shtetl. The death toll was aggravated by Stalin's refusal to evacuate cities, thinking that the Red Army would fight harder to protect their homes, such as in Leningrad, where hundreds of thousands starved in the 3-year-long siege, and how Russian tanks were sent into battle half-built, and how in Stalingrad, the largest battle in history, logistical failures meant that soldiers often went into battle with unloaded rifles, and those deserting the front line were shot by their own comrades. Stalingrad was, however, the turning point of the war, and a point of pride for the Soviet people, managing to surround the overextended and unarmored German army, ensuring the Wehrmacht would advance no further. The Red Army soon launched a large-scale counter-offensive, pushing back the overextended Wehrmacht the next 2 years. Their progress was so quick that it looked like the Soviet Union was going to defeat Nazi Germany single-handedly, as Allied operations up until now had focused on North Africa and Italy. In fact, the Red Army had on their own pushed back the Wehrmacht a massive 1,600 kilometers of captured territory to the border of the German Reich, before the Allies had even opened a second front at Normandy. It was a triumphant moment for the young and poor nation, winning the war on sheer grit and manpower. However, the term winning is probably not the right word, as they had lost between 20 and 30 million people in the war, more than any other nation. At the conclusion of the war, the Allies and the Soviets became enemies once more, with Stalin's reluctance to leave occupied Eastern Europe, choosing instead to set up Soviet-friendly governments in all captured territory. Soviet territory even extended back to Stalin's original deal with Hitler, and when a metaphorical Iron Curtain descended across Europe, the Cold War began. The Cold War deserves a video of its own, but suffice it to say that it would change the world forever. How did Tsarist Russia become such a hotbed of revolutionaries in the first place? From the reforms of Peter the Great to the wise rule of Empress Catherine, perhaps no less a destabilizing factor in Russia's history came with Napoleon Bonaparte's invasion of Russia. In the 2-part series, Napoleon the Invasion of Russia, you can learn about this event. It covers the last great conflict to touch Russia in the century before the Great War, and the social and economic factors that resulted from the French Revolution. I highly recommend this documentary for a more in-depth look at Russian history, which you can watch for free over at CuriosityStream. A great place to watch amazingly well-produced documentaries and other non-fiction content. Simply use the URL curiositystream.com/Sweeney for a 31-day free trial to watch this or any other show you'd be interested in, including history, technology, science, and so much more. Give the site a visit and start watching amazing documentaries today. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and
course I'm not.
subscribe. You can
We have incorporated the
Oh, these videos
latest
are cool.
patented sensor
I like
adjustment technology into our mouse, setting
The Samurai Limited Edition pin is available now. Hurry and order yours now before they run out. Or get one for free by signing up at Patreon like all of these nice people.
Cameras are cool.
This episode is supported by ExpressVPN. Head to expressvpn.com/Sweeney to start protecting your online world for free for 3 months. Great man theory is a political and sociological theory of history whereby the course of events can be wholly or largely attributed to the actions of a few great men. Extremely popular since the middle of the 19th century, this theory has its roots in not only European folklore, but also in tales of warlike bravado and heroic deeds of the past that was popular in the ranks of soldiers during wartime. And we've sure had a lot of that in the past 150 years. Alexander the Great, Winston Churchill, Attila the
Sorry, my turtle was in the water and I was making sure he wasn't.
Khan, Genghis Khan. Great man theory is now thoroughly criticized for its ignorance of vast underlying issues that shape history, but the problem we encounter when looking at both what came before and what came after Genghis Khan in Mongolia is that it's very difficult to imagine the course of history without him. Half of Eurasia today wouldn't exist as we know it without the conquests of this great Khan. We've managed over the last few decades to really strip away at the layers of complexity surrounding figures like Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, and even tyrants like Hitler and Stalin. Less so for Genghis Khan's Mongolian Empire, establishing stronger connections with East and West Eurasia, indirectly inspiring European colonialism with the Silk Road, and even changing the very course of history of the nations that they conquered, raided, or invaded. It's going to come up quite a lot on this channel. So with that challenge all laid out, here we're going to at least attempt to talk about the Mongols in some broader context, by examining 3 questions. How did the Eurasian steppes of the Mongolian homeland lend itself to so many nomadic empires wreaking havoc on the world? How did Genghis Khan change the way life operated on the steppes? And how were the Mongols different from all the nomadic empires that came before them? The Eurasian steppes have been home to various Turkic and Mongolic proto-cultures for centuries, using it as a highway of sorts for migration across and through Central Asia. Why? While river valleys the world over were flourishing with civilizations who needed water for farming, this was not so with the nomad. A nomad's wealth is in his herd. It is the source of their food, their clothing, their building materials, even their alcohol, all made from animal products. And herds migrate when they need new grazing land. So too then, the nomads were always on the move. Soon an economy had developed when these clans encountered settled peoples. The Chinese and the Persians bought all their best horses from the nomads. So too did banditry develop when one clan would raid another, creating a cultural society based on mobile warfare and plunder on the steppes. Soon enough, raids were happening outside of the steppes too, in those southern settled kingdoms. What's a horde of horse-mounted raiders anything but just a large army of bandits, after all? The Chinese have been writing about the barbarians of the steppes since as long as China has been a thing, which begs the question, why did the steppes in particular lend themselves to such large trading empires? Well, firstly, the steppes are huge, stretching from Manchuria in the east to Hungary in the west, with plenty of settled kingdoms to plunder along the way. Secondly, the often overlooked thing about the geography of the steppes is that the further west you went, the generally warmer and wetter the steppe became. So any tribe that rose up in power tended to raid further westward where the most wealth was, in this case wealth being measured in better grazing land. Time and time again, we have seen these large nomadic confederations of tribes aggressively expanding along this vast steppe, running out of grazing land or kingdoms to plunder, and then having a rival tribe rise up and conquer them. This all before Genghis Khan even arrived. The Turkic Xiongnu fell to the Mongolian Janbei, then the Ruran followed by the Turks of the Altai Mountains, also called the Gökturks. The Göktürk Khanate would set a precedent followed by nearly every Khanate that came afterward, controlling nearly the entire length of the steppe by moving westward. West, remember, means warmer weather, which means more animals, which means more wealth, which means more plunder. And as they advanced, so too did other small Turkic tribes migrate to get away from them. Power soon collapsed in the Göktürk Khanate, which split in two. The eastern half in the Mongolian homeland then falling to the Turkic Uyghurs, then overrun by the Mongolic Khitans who established the Liao dynasty in China. Stop me if you're seeing a pattern here. The very thing that allowed the nomadic empires of the steppe to conquer in the first place, their raiding for wealth, was the very thing that would always be its undoing. Power and wealth was determined by the ability to patrol the land you conquered. But if you stretch yourself too thin, or your subjects migrate too far from your control, or you lose one important battle, it could all come crashing down like a house of cards. Multiply this by a few decades and what you end up with is a map that looks like this. So how exactly did Genghis change this cycle on the steppes? Well, as you can imagine, growing up in the Mongolian plateau was a pretty difficult affair for young Genghis Khan, birth named Temujin, who was born to a life of poverty, meaning that he needed to climb the greasy pole by making smart alliances and friendships. And because of his humble position, he tended to reward those most loyal to him.
What's up? How are you? What is that? This it was like some video on like it's like this channel that does like animated like history. Listen to Nightbot. Nightbot knows what he's talking about. We're gonna get on some horror zone. Or not horror zone. We're gonna get on modern warfare. Modern warfare. But how are you, Sussy? God, man. Not bad. How are you, homie? You doing good? We're doing good, man. Oh yeah, I found a playlist I can play on stream. It's probably, the music's probably god awful. But... yeah, this is... You know what? I think I'll be fine without playing. That is awful. That sucks, man. It's so dumb that you can't like just play. I mean, so dumb. Makes no sense why you cannot play. I was gonna play music, but you guys can't hear it because like it's really hard for me to stream that. It really is a problem. Why did it? Hold on. Hold on, chat. Okay. Sorry, my bad, chat. How's everyone doing today, man? Hope everyone's enjoying the stream. Great and amazing day. Oh, let me know if you guys can hear the music or not, because if so, then I might need to unmute it. Because you guys can't, because I can't play music on. How are you, Sussy? How's everybody? Everyone's feeling amazing today. Disaster. Sorry, my bad. Depending on how tonight's stream goes, I might just move back. I mean, not to YouTube, I mean to. Because I hate that I can't play music for you guys. And I don't know, YouTube's just kind of weird. I don't know. It was fun to at least try, you know what I mean? But I hate that I don't have emotes either.
She was at the park with this kid.
I do definitely gotta start uploading more.
Fuck am I talking?
Which I probably was.
And then they were roommates.
Then plus clips, I can't clip anything off the stream. I don't have any way to like, capture it. I want to go through 2-hour long stream, 3-hour long stream. Get everything.
Jones, barbecue and foot massage. Jones, barbecue and foot massage.
What the hell?
Enemy assets ID. Grab the
Hey, I've got a question for you,
we have
Carl.
the bomb. Move.
Yes, ma'am. You gonna eat that? You gonna finish that croissant?
What do you mean, bro? I already ate that motherfucker.
Imagine right.
You don't let it go stale for the flavor?
Nope.
I might get off like after this game.
What a bitch.
Go eat.
Puta.
Ready to leave.
Hey, where you going?
Dude's definitely
Got a little party tonight.
we got a little
Ooh,
party.
a party.
I went all party.
We're planting A.
What?
I mean,
Yo, remember, don't be a pussy. Just sniff a line of cocaine, okay?
If you don't get out
be
of
a
that
pussy.
corner, bro. You got no balls, bro.
Remember, guys, don't be a pussy.
Clark! Yeah,
Do drugs. Someone offers it to you, just do it, bro. Look what your mom said.
Yeah,
Look what your dad said.
Some shit like.
Bomb defused.
Do some
Target
drugs.
intact.
Be happy.
They're making us
He's
fight.
sad.
Nah, them boys deep as shit, right?
God,
Nah.
God.
Pass up.
I ate some food. It was pretty good. It was like bourbon, chicken, some like noodles,
nice hard
some
skill.
potatoes. I got my mom this new air fryer, bro. Pretty fucking good.
Actually, I'm about to get like 2-3 kills running and then we'll get off.
Air fryers are good as fuck, chat.
Alright. You got a job, Tim?
Huh?
10 out of 10
You got a
recommend.
job?
An air fryer.
Yeah, you got a job?
Self-employed.
I'm self-employed, bruh.
What do you do where you can't tell?
I mean, I sell shit. Basically, all I can
God,
say.
he's a drug.
I don't sell drugs.
I just
Wow.
faggots.
What? I'm leaving that game. I don't even know what he said. I don't want to deal with it. I couldn't hear him, and I don't know who said it, so I'm just going. Plus, that game was kind of annoying. I didn't play that shit. Crazy. Oh. That.